The complex colors of a landscape are a challenge for any painter. One way to tackle this challenge is to approach color as problem solving. Figuring out what colors to use can be a straightforward process if you take the time to observe and ask the right questions. If you can determine the problem, you've taken the first step to solving it. A good way to work through the problem of color is with a preliminary color study. Think of it as a rough calculation done on a scrap of canvas. It allows you to experiment freely and perhaps even discover something new. Looking at the reference photo, the first thing to do is to name the colors. So we're looking for the most obvious colors. In the sky there is blue and yellow. The hills and trees are brown. There is blue again in the shadows of the snow, and then there are warm tones in the light of the snow. Next, I want to determine how these colors relate to one another. For example, is there a complementary color relationship? Are there warm, cool color contrasts? Or is there an analogous color relationship? There are warm, cool color contrasts in the sky and in the contrast between the light and shadow of the snow. The white of the snow isn't just plain white. When compared to the shadow of the snow, it looks warm, almost pinkish. There is also a complementary relationship between the blue of the sky and the brown of the hills and trees. What is the dominant color? A dominant color is a color that appears most often in the composition. In this case, blue appears throughout this subject, in the sky and in the shadows of the snow. Once you've determined the major colors and the way they relate to each other, the next step is to translate your observations into pigments. Since blue is the dominant color, it is the most important color choice for this painting. All of the other colors will have to relate to it in one way or another. I have chosen ultramarine blue. For the browns of the mountains, I've chosen burnt sienna. This can be replaced with a mix of cadmium orange and ultramarine blue. The yellow of the sky is a warm yellow-orange, and it's mixed with cadmium orange and cadmium yellow light. Cadmium red will be used for the warm tones of the snow. How do these pigments relate to each other? In terms of color theory, this is called a split complementary palette. Since ultramarine blue is the dominant color, it is interesting to see how these colors can work with it. Orange is its complement, and the mix of the two yield brown, or an equivalent burnt sienna. Blue mixed into the warm orange creates a subtle turquoise for the light part of the sky. Blue mixed with the cadmium red medium yields a slightly dull red-violet for the snow. Now that I've determined my colors, it's time to mix them in the appropriate tones. Let's look again at the image. Starting with the sky, I see that there is a gradation going from yellow-orange to blue. Now I'm going to try these colors out on the painting. Because this is a color study, it's all about large shapes and color relationships. Color studies are generally painted in a quick and loose manner with no attention given to details. Looking at the mountains, I see that they go from a yellow-orange to a brown that seems to have a violet cast to it. Here is how that is played out on the palette. There is a light tone of yellow-orange. There's a mixture of burnt sienna and white. These two are mixed together to yield an intermediate tone and color. The cadmium red and ultramarine blue are mixed to yield a red-violet. As I paint, I mix this violet into the sienna and yellow mixture with my brush to test and try out the colors. Once I've laid in the snowy hill, I decide that I need to adjust the background hills. I experiment with different colors, trying to decide whether the colors should be warmer or cooler. The snow of the foreground is rendered with different tones of ultramarine blue and the violet mix. I prefer to start with the middle tones and shadow tones, and then progressively add in the lighter tones. The lightest tones are added at the end. As I paint, I'm constantly adjusting my shapes. I find it fascinating to see how little detail is needed to get the feel of the subject. This shows to me how painting is really all about color.